We were being neglected. We were considered good for nothing.
Children are considered to be helpless and incapable of making choices, of knowing what is good for them, and need to be guided, instructed, and told what to do. This is true of all children to a greater or lesser degree. In 1989, with the ratification of the Convention of the Rights of the Child, children were universally recognized as the holder of rights, marking a historical departure from the traditional perception of children. The CRC, the most ratified international convention for the first time in modern history, recognizes that children have civil and political rights and highlights their right to form organizations, to access relevant information, and participate in all decisions concerning them. This effectively means that children are active subjects in realizing their rights and not passive recipients of the services and protection provided by adults. The CRC places the best interest of the child as an overriding framework for all intervention designed for children.
The Convention on the Rights of the Child really deals with three main areas. The first one is protection of children. The second one is the provision of services to children. And the third and the most interesting one is the whole question of participation of children. Unfortunately, in the translation of the convention, we adults have concentrated more on the first two, which is the provision of protection and services to children. But when these two areas of the convention are read along with the third one, which is the participation of children, it changes the quality and the nature of the first two. It changes, it's a whole dimension, whole new dimension.
In several remote villages of South India, a peaceful revolution is gathering momentum. Children and young persons from extremely marginalized communities living in very hierarchical, paternalistic, and feudalistic communities have organized themselves. They are participating in the planning of their own villages. They are gently but firmly breaking down caste and gender barriers. They are identifying the problems that they face and negotiating solutions with their local governments. They have begun to write their history and actively influence their own destiny.
See, one of the very first things children had to do was to make space and time for themselves, which meant that they had to find ways of being with other children, of sharing their space with each other, of sharing their own personal stories, and to go further, and to look at common issues and to build on and build further. And for this, they put in a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and a lot of sacrifices. And they constantly did it because it meant a lot to them. I remember a child who once came to a meeting and said that, Akka, I'm losing my job because I'm coming for this meeting, but I still came because it's important.
Enabling children's participation really demands a lot from adults. First of all, I think adults need to equip themselves to work with children, equip themselves to empower children, equip themselves not to be in the lead role, but just to be facilitators or catalysts.
Vanaja was a mischievous little tomboy. She was the first girl who graduated from our appropriate construction technology program. She comes from a small village called Kalavara on the foothills of the Western Ghats in India. She heads a construction group and now lives in Kanyana village on her own. She was a member of Bhima Sangha and is now a member of Namma Sabha. Recently, she led an amazing struggle for the landless and succeeded.
I built a hut for myself here like many others did. The local government got to know of it and the official came to inquire. This land is only for the people of the village, he said. I asked very politely, But what about people like me who have migrated to this village? Even birds have nests. He left saying, "She is so young, how dare she speak like that?"
2 days later, he returned accompanied by 2 policemen, a few members of the panchayat, landlords, and 2 trucks. Vanaja and the others in the colony were just preparing their evening meal. The children of some of the households were eating. Without warning, without having issued any notice, they proceeded to demolish 18 homes. Vanaja's was the first.
When they began to pull down the houses, I refused to leave. Soon we were homeless. The local government did not take our complaints seriously. We sat in protest in front of the higher office. We set up our stoves in their office and camped there, refusing to give up until our houses were rebuilt. Finally, they did do that. We got the very person who demolished our houses to inaugurate them.
Children like Vanaja have been making spaces for themselves within their homes and their communities.
When I first joined Bhima Sangha, my family tried to discourage me and stop me. But when they began to notice the amount of knowledge I gained, the opportunities I got, and that manner in which I grew, they began to recognize that children gain a lot from Bhima Sangha.
5 years ago, even I thought, why should I do what children tell me to? Let them do what we say.
Even when our families let us participate, our neighbors told them, "Don't let him, you will be in trouble." When they began to notice that we were taking up not only personal issues, but that of the whole community, they too began to support us.
When children stand before us and present their issues, we need to hang our heads in shame because they don't say, "I want a good life." They say, "The entire village has to flourish."
In December 1997, working children representing their movements from 3 continents of the world, Africa, Asia, and Latin America, arrived in the small village of Kanyana, Kundapur, on the west coast of South India, for the first international meeting of working children. This was initiated by the International Working Group on Child Labour and facilitated by the Concern for Working Children and Bhima Sangha.
ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಕಲಿಕೆ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕಾಳಜಿ ವಹಿಸಿ ಮೇಲ್ವಿಚಾರಣೆ ನಡೆಸಬೇಕು. ಆಯಾ ಪ್ರದೇಶಗಳಿಗೆ ತಕ್ಕಂತೆ ದುಡಿಯುವ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಸಂಘಟನೆ ಮುಖಾಂತರ.
Working children's movements, with a long history of struggle in the defense of their rights and for recognition of political and social protagonism, participated in this consultation.
ನಮಗೆ ನಿಜವಾಗಿ ಸಮಾಜ ಬದಲಾಗಬೇಕು.
They presented unified positions on the need to organize politically, to represent themselves, and on the right to be consulted by planners at local, national, and international levels. Their handling of differences, their conflict resolution skills, and their demonstration of love and affection was amazing. It was here that they formed the International Movement of Working Children and began to fight for their right to representation. The children of Bhima Sangha and the Makala Panchayat have travelled to all regions of the globe as resource persons and trainers representing their organizations. However, the most amazing thing about them is that they are all eager to return home, get back to work, and take their struggle forward. These children are firmly rooted in their soil, closely woven into the Indian social and political fabric. They have become powerful agents of change.
The first reason for any group to participate is for survival. And I need to live, I need to earn, I need to live, I need to survive.
A young coolie was beaten in full view of the police, who did not do anything to stop it. The boy died. For fear of suffering a similar fate, the other young coolies who had witnessed the beating remained silent. Only when our union stepped in to fight the case were they able to speak out.
The second issue is that I don't want discrimination. I don't want to be discriminated against. For instance, the women in the working class movement said, we don't want discrimination vis-a-vis men. Later on, the next step was not discrimination, but positive discrimination. I am a woman, and therefore I need maternity leave. And when it comes to children, they are talking about issues like I need education along with work. I need vocational training, I need skill building.
We discuss with all the girls in the village. We find out what their problems are and take them up in the task force.
The next step would be the whole question of solving causes. Like we need to solve the causes of child labor. We need to solve the reasons for which we are suffering, the reason for exploitation.
Fundamentales también para que haya más explotación y quizás más prostitución, más raterismo, más chicos deambulantes.
Perhaps the highest level could be the contribution to the vision of a new world.
When marginalized individuals or groups have to participate, organization and information become their strength. Children have definitely become harbingers of change. Just as adults, if children are provided with information and opportunities, they can not only identify problems, but also find solutions in partnership with us.
Now we have our own example of a big survey which children of Bhima Sangha conducted. They surveyed about 7,500 households on various socio-economic indicators. And they collected the information, they analyzed the information, they used that information. The most important aspect or the most impressive aspect of this process was that they were able to intervene immediately.
When we take up issues, we collect all the required information with examples. When we take them up at the local government, adults are willing to consult us because they trust our judgment.
These are young persons who have experienced the strength of their organizations. They are struggling to fight injustice they face and are working to build a better world. They are fighting the same battles as those fought by the working class and women's movements. They face the same questions regarding their ability, their intentions, and their integrity. They are struggling for their right of entry to political space. They are making tremendous sacrifices because this struggle means a lot to them. Children must be given the right to intervene in their environment and change elements that do not uphold their rights as children. We, the adults, like to remain in control and advocate on behalf of children. That also gives us the possibility to abuse them. Children should have the right and the ability to resist this.
Your Excellencies, Mr. Director General, representatives of working children, ladies and gentlemen.
Movements of working children were the very first to encounter organized hostility at all levels. At the international level, this was most apparent in the ILO conference organized by the government of the Netherlands.
Our being here has a very long history. The working children's movements from Latin America, Africa, and Asia got together for the first time in 1996 in India. It was at that meeting that we placed before the representatives of the government of Netherlands our demand to be represented in this meeting. We are here today as a result of that.
Anthony Swift, who followed the international movement of working children in the Amsterdam conference, made the following observations. The representatives of young workers' movements gained some important recognition at Amsterdam, most notably from ministers in the Dutch government, but relatively few ministers or union leaders sought them out. Some adult delegates hardly augured well for child-centered implementation of the new convention. Some implied that the young delegates were being told what to say by adults who had their own agenda. The young representatives felt they had little chance to explain what their movements really had to offer, and that trade unions, which should have been their allies, were against them. Anyone observing the intensive deliberations of the young delegates immediately before and during the Amsterdam conference could see that they were not manipulated. These were meetings at which they prepared their strategies, allocated tasks among themselves, and planned their interventions in what was a highly unfamiliar and sophisticated conference arena.
Probably the most important ethical issue in this arena is the whole question of manipulation. And it's been raised several times, it's been raised continuously, and it's also been raised in a context where when people have wanted to undervalue the participation of children. But there is another aspect of manipulation, which I think is far more important and far more serious. And that is the whole question of the role that adults play with children. I mean, are we unconsciously at some stage manipulating children? Do we come across so strongly sometimes that the child thinks that maybe that's what these adults want me to say? Are we interpreting things that children say the way we would like to understand them? Are we putting ideas in their heads? Are we not listening to children and trying to understand really what they are trying to say, even if it contradicts what we believe in?
First of all, we must have integrity, and then we should demand the same from others. We don't want anyone to point fingers at us. We want to bring credit to our organization. We respect others, and we expect others to respect us.
Children usually do not like to confront anyone. They want the best for themselves, their families, and their communities. That is how they view issues. We have also learned that adults too need their own space in this process to express their viewpoints. If not, they may try to take over the spaces children have.
And apparently the first time the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child was drafted, children were asked to hand over pens to the heads of the state to sign the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and perhaps that was how participation was understood at that point in time.
We know the situation we live in. We experience it. We are definitely capable of taking decisions about ourselves.
Earlier, we did not know how inappropriate the decisions made by adults were to us. We realized that only after we began to participate. And it is only through our participation that we realize how important participation is.
A child should come as a representative of an organization. He will then keep thinking of all the children who chose him as a representative and then participate on their behalf. This carries a lot of value.
Because the minute they stand up there and say that I am a representative of my Bhima Sangha or of my national movement or the movement of international working children's unions, they bring with them a tremendous mandate. They bring with them the concerns of all those children, and they bring upon themselves a sense of accountability.
In fact, there is no cause of the ILO that is more important or more central to it than the right of workers to organize. The issue is, how do we get right to representation for children in a world in which that is not seen so far as a right?
What it is that really makes a difference to the participation we are talking about is the ideological frame which surrounds it. And if that ideological frame is not just, and it's not democratic, and it is not looking at equality, it is not looking at all the things we hold very valuable to social justice, then that is not the participation we're talking about.
Once children are empowered to participate, they also need arenas to participate. And therefore structures need to be created, or existing structures need to be restructured or redesigned to create the political space where children can access and where they can participate. And that's a very important role that we adults need to play.
Have you ever heard of a children's Gram Sabha? It is totally unique. When people see the banners announcing one, they surely wonder what it is. But when a district officer himself comes to attend a children's Gram Sabha, it becomes very clear how special it is. At first, working children got organized and formed Bhima Sangha. That became their forum to raise issues. Along with that, representatives of working children, school-going children, and children with disabilities jointly formed the Children's Council, or Makkala Panchayats. This gave them a forum to take up issues of all children.
All the children of a panchayat elect a parallel children's government. This election is held by the formal government administration, and the secretary of the adult panchayat acts as the secretary of the children's panchayat. A task force that is chaired by the district minister links the adult and children's panchayats.
When children raise issues about their villages, they do so because they are being deeply affected by those problems. The elected representatives and officials have to pay a lot of attention to them. In the panchayats, where only adults participate and children don't, party politics takes precedence. Due to this, a lot of developmental work gets stymied. Children's participation leads to the development of the rural areas and of the entire younger generation.
Thousands of children are a part of Bhima Sangha and the Makkala Panchayats. They demonstrate participation in so many new and different ways that we adults sometimes fail to notice or recognize. The fact that a child has walked 7 kilometers to a meeting. The fact that she had to work harder and quicker to finish her household chores. The fact that he had to bring along his baby sister and mind her. These are all acts of participation.
A little girl came up here and said, when the water floods the footbridge, its level rises by this many feet. So we need a bridge that is this high and this long. I have attended many adult Gram Sabhas. Rarely do elected representatives or government officials have such a depth and quality in their information about the problems or about the solutions. Each and every local government should conduct children's Gram Sabhas. Such Gram Sabhas should become a role model for the entire country.
One of the children, Prema, now a young lady of course, said that if we work, we can earn money and we can earn a livelihood. But it's only through participation that you earn respect.
Once, we asked our children how far they had to walk to school. They said an hour. We wanted to know if it was a 3-kilometer or 4-kilometer walk. Actually, the effort of the child and the hardship is not so much in the distance, but in that 1 hour of walking. We learned that we should never change the idiom of children, because in their idiom lies the truth of their message.
The moment you say yes to children's participation, it's like children holding up a mirror to your face and you see yourself as you really are. Sometimes you don't like that image, but you have to live with it. And not only just live with it, you have to learn to change. And that has been, I think, the most difficult learning curve. The change in attitude of adults, the respecting of children. You might love them and care for them, but the respecting of children has really been the most important, I think, learning that we have.
Listen to us, communicate with us, and respect us. Do not give the impression that you fight children. Concentrate on fighting exploitation of children.
Children's organizations and movements have multiple and unique histories. Their birth, evolution, and maturity may take on different paths based on the context in which children function, on the issues they wish to address, on their ideological frame and vision. There will always be some that are more developed than others, while there will be some waiting to be born.
ಆದರೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಕೊನೆ ಪಕ್ಷ ಇಡೀ ಜಗತ್ತಿನಲ್ಲಿನ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸುವ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ.
It is becoming inevitable that we listen to children.
ಅವರು ಸಂಘಟಿತರಾಗಿ ಭಾಗವಹಿಸಬೇಕು.
This has not happened only because of our concern, but because children are getting organized and demanding that they be heard.
ಯಾರೇ ಇದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಬಹುಶಃ
Why is it that the principle of organization and participation, which we respect in all groups as their means to improve and transform their situations, not be acceptable when it comes to children? In the working class movement, as a result of their struggle, it is said that their white flag turned red. Do children have to be forced to follow an equally bloody path? Does their flag also have to turn red before we recognize their right to participation?
Until lions have their own historians, history will always be written